Welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Lebbing, and I love seeing business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs have massive success in their businesses. Are you ready to reach a higher level in your business? Are you looking to rise to the top and break through the barriers that are holding you back? If this is you, join us on the Mind for Success podcast. All right. Hello and welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Lebbing, and I am so excited today to talk and introduce you to Chris Myles. I met Chris on another platform, and I was just really fascinated by what he does. He's an expert website investor. He's a blogger, he's an entrepreneur. He loves passive income, and that's the goal, I think, for a lot of folks. And I'm going to let him tell his story because I love it. So thank you and welcome to the show, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kim. I really do appreciate you taking the time to have me on. But just to answer your question, yeah. So when I first got started, it was just me and my wife in the very beginning. And we had jobs, but they weren't the greatest paying jobs in the world. We were I used to call them JOBs, or just over broke, because we're just making just enough money to pay the bills. And if anything ever catastrophic happened, something happened to the house or car or whatever, we'd be in that statistic. I think there's a statistic out there that says that, a lot of 70% of Americans or something can't take a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. That was where we were. And I didn't necessarily like it, but we were just kind of trucking. That was just the way that it was. That's just kind of what we thought life was at that point. Then we found out that we were pregnant with our first son. And when Benji popped up, my wife expressed to me that she wanted to stay home with him full time. And I remember telling her, we can't afford that. You're nuts. We can't do this at all. You got to at least work part-time. And she was like, no. She sat me down and said, you need to figure this out. I was like, oh. So I had to put on my big boy pants pretty quickly. And I went online. I did what most people do. I Googled how to make money online. Came across a lot of garbage, it's a cesspool out there. I tried a few things. None of them really worked very well, but I did eventually stumble upon blogging. And I was able to launch a couple of sites, and within about 18 months, I was able to have her quit her job. About 2 years after that, I was able to quit my job. So now we've been doing this, laptop lifestyle now for about 4 years now, and we're still doing pretty good.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I mean, there's so many people. I just think there's so many people. This is something, what you do, and I want to have you explain that a little bit to the audience, but I was really fascinated by it because I think I had heard of it, but it was just like, that's not for me. And so I probably deleted it from my brain. Yeah. And then I ran across you and I was like, this is really interesting. So just talk more specifically a little bit about how you actually make money blogging.
Yeah. That's an excellent question. It's a great industry, in my opinion, and I'm all about passive income. I'm all about getting a return on investment, not just with money, but with time as well. And in my opinion, blogging is one of the best ways to do that. So essentially what I do is I create what are called niche websites, or a niche is kind of like a topic for a site. So like bowling is a niche, golf is a niche. So I just pick one, and usually it's one that I like, I'm probably already doing quite often, and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for me to talk about it on a website. So based on the topic that I choose, I start answering common questions in that space and creating articles around it. And these articles are well written. They are the kind of articles that, as soon as you land on it, I have the answer to the question right there at the top. And then I try to hook the reader and say something like, if you want to know the details of how this actually works, then continue reading, or something like that. And then you try to get them to stay on the page as long as you can by delivering good value and answering the question as thoroughly as possible. When you do that enough for enough topics for individual blog posts on your site, then you start to work with what Google wants as well, because they're trying to get people the answers to their questions. Anytime you go to Google, typically you're Googling a question and looking for an answer. So anytime you can work with what Google wants, then they're going to reward you with traffic or people to your website. So you do that enough, you can get that traffic up to, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people per month. And there's money. Once you have people coming to your website, then it's up to you to just, figure out a way to monetize it, right? And to make some money with it. And there's a number of ways you can do it. One of my favorite ones is affiliate marketing. That's just partnering with other brands and then promoting their products. And then also you have display ads. Those are those like annoying little pop-up ads when you go to a website.
Right.
You can call them annoying, but you see them on every site because it's effective. It makes money and it works. And that's probably the two main ways that I monetize my sites.
Okay. So question for you.
Yeah.
So you talked about website investing. You're a website investor. Is that the same as what you just described, or is there something more there?
Yeah, essentially. So what I just described to you was how to start a website from scratch, like, going to GoDaddy.com or somewhere and buying the name of your website, which is called a domain name. And you buy that and then you just start building a site on it. That's how you do it from scratch. Now, there is a certain aspect of investment with that as well, because when you know what you're doing, you can throw money at it to have it grow faster and get your time back, right? So something that I do is I have writers who write articles for me. I do a lot of the research as to what articles they need to write, but then I send it to them and then they spend the time to write the article. So normally when I seed a website, when I'm just getting it started, I'll probably come up with at least 30 to 100 ideas for articles. And then once I have those ideas, I literally just ship them off to my writers and usually get them back within a few weeks, a month or two. And then once I get those articles back, post them onto the website and just let them go. So because I'm paying those writers, there's a certain amount of investment that's needed there. And because I got to pay them for their time to do that article. But because they're doing that, I don't have to do it myself, right? Because the writing portion is probably the most time-consuming part of the entire content creation process. Now, that's one aspect when coming from scratch. But another aspect of it is where you can buy websites that are already in motion, that are already getting traffic, already getting income, because it's an asset that's generating revenue. So it's basically a business, right? So as long as you treat it as a business, you can buy and sell businesses. So I can find a website. I just recently bought one, actually. It was making about $25 a month, so it wasn't making like a decent amount of money, but that site was worth about $1,000, $1,500. So I just paid $1,500 to do that. And I already get a site that's making money and that has some traffic. Now all I got to do is just go in and make my little tweaks and change this and change that, increase the articles on the site, and then try to make more money with it. And then after about 4 to 6 months, I should be able to get this up to a few $100s a month, if not $1,000 or more dollars per month. At which point, that $1,000 site that I made is probably worth anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 at that point. So you're kind of investing early on just to grow the site, but then once it reaches a point where it's making good money month in and month out, you can then sell that business off. It's very similar to like flipping houses.
I was just thinking this. So this reminds me of flipping houses or flipping anything, really. I was at a thrifting this past weekend, just side note, and I found an old typewriter that I plan on flipping. So little, but that I think it's fascinating. So do you have to answer this question? Do you have to know a lot about SEO and websites to be able to do this as a business, or are there resources out there that can help you?
Yeah, there's a decent amount that you would probably like to know when it comes to that, because we talked about like flipping houses, right, Kim? So you go to you look at a house, maybe you're driving by, you see a house for sale, and it's like dilapidated, it just looks terrible. You're like, I don't want that house, right? But not a website, but an investor might look at that house and be like, you know what, I can change this, I can move that over there, I can fix this, I can plant some flowers or whatever, and now I can increase the value of that site. So I essentially do the same thing. So it would be helpful if I knew how to change the gutters and change the flooring and and all that
Sure.
kind of stuff within the house. It's the same difference with your website. Um, SEO honestly is not as difficult as people make it seem,
Mm,
because it seems like this big nefarious, like, oh my gosh, SEO, or for those of you who don't know, search engine optimization is what SEO means, and you're just optimizing your articles so that they are more easily found within Google. I liken it to a like a library. You go to the library, you're looking for a particular kind of book. You punch it into the computer, it gives you like the Dewey Decimal number or whatever, and then you know where to go in the library to get it. Well, we are creating our Dewey Decimal system with our websites and then letting Google come out and find it so that it can present it to the right people.
mm,
So a lot of the things that you need to know about SEO for the most part is to find a good keyword that you can rank for, because you can't just rank for anything. You have to make sure it's something that's within your wheelhouse for your website. And then once you found a good word, you put that word in your title, you put it into your URL or the structure of the website, where so if you go to like www.kimlebbing.com slash whatever, make sure it's in that portion of
uh-huh.
your website as well, and then also include it in the first 100 or so words of your article, and then naturally throughout the rest of the article. Don't over optimize it. Don't put it in there unnecessarily. Make sure it makes
Sure.
sense. Remember that you're writing this for a person and not a computer. And once you go through that, that's about 60 per 70% of SEO right there, especially for what's called on-page SEO. So once you've done that, you've done a big part of the job, and just finish the article, make sure it looks nice, and then move on to the next one.
Okay. Okay. That was huge. And helpful because that's probably the simplest explanation of SEO, like you said, that I've heard, because just like you said, I hear so many times, that it's complicated and it's difficult, and that's how that's how it is in my brain, or has been up until this point. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
It can get complicated if you wanted to, but usually for beginners, I just try to teach them the basics. And once you do it enough, you start to memorize what it is, because you're just trying to set up your site to where Google can easily read it and give it to the right person, right? And once
Mm,
you've done that, you kind of just let Google do his thing. Yeah. And then, so don't over optimize by just putting the words, some people will say, maybe they're trying to rank for how to make a cup of coffee, and they'll say, this is how you make a cup of coffee. When you make a cup of coffee, you do this. So while you're making a cup of coffee, that doesn't work. And Google will actually penalize your site
mm,
if you do that too much, because you're just trying to scam the system. And that's not what they want you to do.
right. Right. They want you to create real value, I'm
Correct.
guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm curious with, because I know your story with building it up, and you had a family at home. So how did you delegate your time to this, or how much time did it take in the beginning to growing the blog with your family and all you were working, you said you were working also, like how much time did that take?
Yeah, it was tough. It wasn't the easiest thing to do in the world. Um, I had a 9 to 5, but it wasn't really 9 to 5. It rarely is.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would leave the house around 7:30 in the morning. I probably wouldn't get home till after 6, that evening. So, I'm gone for 12, 10, 12, 15, sometimes 15 hours a day. Plus I was on call all the time. I was the
Mm,
only person in my office for like 50-mile radius. So if anything happened, I was the one that had to go back and go and fix it. But so yeah, it was a lot of time that was required for the regular 9 to 5, but it wasn't it wasn't enough, right?
yeah.
Plus I hated the fact that I was missing out on my family's life. I'll tell you a quick story, Kim. I remember when my son was, I think he had just started saying a few words, and he said something. To be honest, I can't remember what the exact word was, but for the sake of argument, let's just say it was blogging or something. And he said blogging, and I was like, "That's exciting!" I was like, "Oh my gosh, he said something." So then I picked him up and I ran him to my wife, and I was like, "Look, he said it." And I tried to prod him, and he finally said blogging, something like that. And my wife looked at me and was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. He's been saying that for about a week now." And I was like, "Ah."
Oh,
Oh, that one, that was the knife and twisting right there. you know so that's when I kind of realized that, okay, I need to find something that's going to allow me to have more time, get more time freedom. When you're working on 9 to 5, you're trading time for money. I
right.
need to find a way to create resources that generated money for me, whether I was working on it or not. And when you build a website, I post an article, people, just like this podcast, right? It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for whoever, whenever they want to find it and listen to it. It's the exact same thing with your blog. You're creating this content and it's there forever to be consumed, at which point people are looking at your content. At that point, you can find a way to monetize. So I guess to answer your original question, all of that, when I realized that whole aspect of trying to create an income source that can work without me, I kind of changed my mindset as to what I was working on. And I realized that I was building something that was bigger than me. So I just started working on it really, really hard. I probably would, wake up an hour earlier and try to work on stuff, maybe stay up an hour later. At this time, Benji still, or my son was still probably having the hardest time getting through the night. So when I was sitting there just holding him and trying to keep him, whatever, I was watching a training or I was reading something and trying to just fill my mind with as much of this as possible as I was continuing to blog. So probably an extra hour or two a day, for a while. But then when money started to actually roll in and became significant money, not just, money to, pay for dinner or something. We're talking about paying a cell phone bill, to paying the light bill, to paying the mortgage, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And once I started seeing the money come in like that, then I started devoting more time to it. And it became a waste of time to go to work at that point, at my regular job. So after about maybe 2 years from the time that I had started it, I handed in my resignation and was like, let's just go ahead and give this a try. Worst case scenario, I'm able to stick at home with the family for about a year or so. We have built up a little nest egg of money, and that's I hadn't had to worry about that in the last 4 years now. So we're doing pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I was reading in your bio some of your keys to success. And I know just noting the very first one about paying off debt and providing. So just talk, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about that, because I feel like right now, especially, people are in a place because the economy is not the best, right?
Yeah.
Inflation is high. And so people may be dealing with some of those debt type things going on in their lives.
Yeah. So paying off debt was huge. One thing I didn't mention before was that I had accrued like over $30,000 or so worth of bad credit card debt. And I was, high interest. It was just a terrible time. But I couldn't do anything about it. I was just making the minimum payments because that's all I could afford. So when the site started making money, I would literally just take almost every cent of it and just throw it onto those debts. And once I finally paid it all off and I had like zero credit card debt, like I remember thinking to myself, wow, I actually have a positive net worth now. I was like, yo, this is crazy, So when it comes to interest, I try to make it, I'm allergic to paying interest, especially high interest, So I still use credit cards all the time. I've become a bit of a credit card snob. So, I have, a credit card, I put everything on it, but I just make sure that I pay it off every single month, even if it hurts, because it needs to, because I don't want to pay any interest, because I like to do the points thing and all of that fun stuff. And the second you start paying interest, you start negating all of your gains, when it comes to that. So I just make sure that I paid off all of my debt and make sure that I pay it off every single month, even if I'm like, I don't want to do it, or something like that, because it's just going to build up and build up. And you need to know how to manage it. So paying off debt was huge. I tried to pay off smart debt. So for example, we still have a mortgage, but it was because it was at like the rock bottom interest rate. So I was like, I would do better having my money invested somewhere else, like in a website or in maybe not the stock market, but like index funds, and things of that nature. So I'll just make sure that it was there. And as long as I'm making that 7 to 10% in index funds, and then making a lot more really with the return on investment for investing in these websites, then I'm always going to come out ahead. So I went ahead and just doing that. One day I'm going to pay off the mortgage, and we do have a rental property. So we're just working on probably chipping on that a little bit. Other than that, just paying off down the debt and creating more assets rather than liabilities.
Yeah. I completely agree. And there's a lot of so just going into the mindset piece, there's a lot of mindset that goes with that. And I think whenever you're struggling with a lot of debt or a lot of payments, it can affect your mindset and how much you're able to bring in as well.
Yeah, it can make you desperate.
Yeah, that's it.
I was in a similar situation, when we were on all of that debt. We considered bankruptcy for a second, just like, I don't, there's no way that we're going to pay this. When Benji was born, we didn't have the greatest insurance in the world. So I was left with like a $9,000 hospital bill,
Mm,
and I didn't know what to do. We were pretty much lost. And I think because my back was against the wall at that time, that blogging had to work. It wasn't one of
yes.
those, because I had tried other stuff, Kim, and a lot of them didn't work. Or maybe they made a little
Yeah.
bit of money, but it wasn't enough to continue going with it. But blogging actually had a decent return. I stuck with it and kept going.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It sounds like you stayed consistent. It sounds like you stayed focused on it. And I love that you just said, your back was up against a wall, because that's
Yeah.
what motivate. It literally is what it propels people to move forward when they feel like they're in that tight spot. As long as you don't stay in it, it's healthy.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of artists, like who make music or whatever, they get to a point to where they may have struggled growing up, and it inspired them to make all of this great music. You can say the same thing about like times in the '60s and the '70s, right? When in the '50s, where times were just tough, but those time periods produced some of the best music ever because people were just being more creative. But then sometimes you get to the point to where, okay, now you finally made it, and you don't have as much going at you, and all of a sudden your creativity kind of suffers a little bit or is not
Right.
doing as well. So when your back is against the wall, you have to create some type of motivation that's going to keep you moving forward. If you're
Mm,
doing it just to make money, you're gonna give up, because the money's not going to be there initially. You need to keep doing it because either one, you love it and that's the only thing that you want to do, or two, it has to work, and you have to have a motivation, a reason why,
right.
that it needs to be done, versus just letting it happen. And my
Yep.
big why was trying to spend more time with the family.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, if you're only doing something just to make money, it's a lower level energy. It's a
That's
scarcity
true.
thinking kind of thing. And it doesn't sustain you and doesn't keep you. It's hard to stay consistent when you're coming from that place.
Yeah, you do need to. I mean, having that big reason why, I think it's a big difference for how I had other businesses that just didn't do well. Like I used to buy and sell clothes online. I used to
Hmm.
buy and sell computers. I would kind of do this, kind of similar to you, trying to do like a little arbitrage type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I would always just get, bogged down with the fees and stuff. 'Cause I used to do it on eBay, and I would buy a computer and then try to fix it up just a tad bit and make it look nice, and then try and sell it. And yeah, excuse me, I would sell it for a decent amount of money, but I had to give eBay like a huge percentage of it. Then I had to give
Mm,
PayPal a huge percentage of it. And at the end
right.
of the day, the money I was left with, I was like, this isn't worth it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to have a big reason why, and it's going to force you to keep moving forward even when things get tough, because they will get tough.
Right, right. And what's interesting is it sounds like those beginning days really probably inspired you to do what you're doing now because you found a better way to do it, or at least a better way for you. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of
yeah.
flipping, like you're flipping. You went from flipping computers to now you're
Uh,
flipping websites. So it's a smarter way to work.
yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of the people who have had success. I mean, I've read a lot of books and seen a lot of other success stories and everything. And rarely is someone's big success their first go at it.
Right.
Usually it's their seventh or eighth chance at going at it. And usually, even though those first few chances didn't necessarily work out, you still learned a little bit each time, so that when you finally got to that one opportunity that really took off, it's a culmination of everything that happened previously.
Absolutely.
And so you don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as maybe not, maybe it is a failure, but it's a failing forward. You're failing toward the next thing. You just got to not give up. The
Right.
wonderful thing about our business is that you only need entrepreneurship to work once. If it works
Mm,
once and it takes off, then you're pretty much set at that point. But a lot of times people will try it at 2 or 3 times. Oh, I can't do this, and then they just go back to the doldrums of their cubicle. So
right.
if you got to hate that life if you really wanted to make any changes with it, though.
You do. And it is a transition. I mean, I know that with the work that I do, it is a big transition to go from employee to entrepreneur. And you do have to have the right mindset in order
Yeah,
to do that.
It's not for the
Yeah.
faint of heart. I'll give you that.
It definitely is not. It definitely is not. And I occasionally I'll see, this is a side note, I'll see somebody actually create with their business another job.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
yeah.
But it is a
And
job that you can decide when to work on, which is,
yes.
so I do like that aspect of it. But
Yeah.
that's why I try to invest in getting help, virtual assistants, writers, whatever. So now it's much more advantageous for me to pay them to do it than for me to do it myself, because I value my time a little better than what I did in the
Absolutely.
beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you had some resources for people to check out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called the Blogger Evolution Podcast. So be sure to go check that out. Be sure to subscribe too. So that's my baby, and it's a great podcast that basically shows you how to do a lot of the stuff a little more in depth than what we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about today. Especially if you just want to get started. It's a great industry to start blogging. You can start blogging with like $20. It's very, very cheap, low barrier of entry. So I definitely do recommend go check out the podcast. One of the hardest things too, when it comes to trying to come up with a podcast, with a blog, is trying to come up with a topic. We talked about golf and bowling, all that fun stuff earlier, but what's the perfect one for you? So I do have a training that actually shows you exactly how to do that. And it's at bloggerevolution.com/crash course. So if you can, check that out, it'll help you choose a niche. It's free, just check it out, and it'll help you choose your niche so that you can get going with your business online.
Awesome. Well, we'll have those resources linked in the show notes of this. So I just want to thank you for being on today. Lots of great info, an industry that I think I was aware of, but not really until I talked to you. And I just find it fascinating. So thanks for being on. And to our listeners, go check out those links, download some free resources and check it out. This might be something for you to earn a little extra income, or maybe even turn it into a career.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, Kim. Really do appreciate it.
You are quite welcome.
Are you ready to break through the barriers that are holding you back and reach a higher level in your business in just 4 hours? Be sure to click the link today and join other high-achieving professionals that have worked with Kimberly Lebbing to accelerate their success.